Hello, and welcome to our tutorial series, Preparing to File Forms 1099. My name is Kathy Burns, and in our series of 1099 tutorials, we are going to guide you through the steps of preparing your books for the annual processing of the two most common Form 1099, 1099 Miscellaneous and 1099 NEC. January can be a very busy and stressful time for company bookkeepers and management as year-end reports, returns, and other government agency forms are required to be completed. There is good news, however. The process of completing 1099s and filing them by their required deadline can be streamlined by preparing your books in advance. At first glance, it may seem overwhelming, but really it's not that difficult. This is the first video in the series, and we're going to start with a quick overview of the Forms 1099 and then zoom in on the most commonly used forms, Form 1099 Miscellaneous and the new 1099 NEC used for reporting non-employee compensation. Okay, let's get started. Currently, there are many different types of Form 1099. We will discuss only the four types that are generally encountered in common business operations. It is helpful to understand these different types of 1099s when setting up and maintaining your bookkeeping. The 1099 DIV, or dividend, is utilized to report dividends and distributions paid to investors. The 1099 INT, or interest, is utilized to report the interest income paid to investors during the calendar year. When entering transactions into your books that are payments of dividends, distributions, and interest, be sure to sufficiently enter detailed information that will allow you to sort and total these payments by payment recipient. You may want to refer to the IRS 1099 instructions for these types of 1099 forms to see if your transaction should include specific memos. These instructions can be found at our Small Business Services webpage at jrcpa.com. One really important note: QuickBooks does not facilitate the processing of the 1099 DIV or the 1099 INT. So please also refer to our Small Business Services webpage and the IRS instructions for further information. By and large, one of the most commonly prepared 1099s is the 1099 Miscellaneous. It is used to report many different types of business-related payments, including rent. Payments such as rent, royalties, and some attorney fees are among the items reported to the IRS and state revenue agencies using this form. An important note here: before 2020, non-employee compensation was also reported on this form. However, starting in 2020, the IRS introduced a new Form 1099 called the 1099 NEC, or 1099 Non-Employee Compensation. It isolates the information previously reported in Box 7 of the 1099 Miscellaneous to its own new form, the 1099 NEC. Now we're going to zoom in on the 1099 Miscellaneous and 1099 NEC and the three focus areas for setting up our books. 1. Which type of recipients or payees need to be reported on a 1099? 2. Which method of payments are reported on the 1099s? And 3. Which types of payments are reported? We will cover these three areas before we begin setting up our software for 1099 processing. This is because they are interrelated. And if you begin the setup process without understanding how they interrelate, you are apt to do unnecessary data entry and data revision later. A couple of quick notes. We will be using QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online accounting software in our 1099 tutorials. However, the tasks required to prepare your books for processing 1099s can generally be applied to just about any accounting software system. Finally, as you follow along, if you have additional clarifying questions about where specific transactions are to be reported, please refer to our Small Business Services page at jrcpa.com, where we have additional information and IRS resources available. Form 1099 Miscellaneous reports payments your company makes to vendors or subcontractors for services rendered to your company in the course of your business or trade. There are common exceptions to which vendors receive 1099s. These exceptions are corporations, including LLCs, that are treated as C Corps or S Corps. It can be difficult sometimes to determine the legal form of a vendor's business. We'll go over the best practice for verifying this information on the next slide. Rent payments to real estate agents or property management companies. If your company is paying rent to one of these types of companies rather than directly to the building owner, you will not have to file a 1099. Tax-exempt organizations and tax-exempt trusts. Tax-exempt trusts include IRAs, HSAs, Archer MSAs, etc. And finally, U.S. government and foreign governments. The best practice for determining the legal business form of a vendor, as well as other required information, is to send a Form W-9 for them to complete, sign, and return. The W-9 requires the vendor to indicate the legal business form, the legal business name, current address, and the taxpayer identification number, a social security number, or an EIN. This is all information that you need in order to complete the 1099, which you will issue the vendor. The vendor is legally required to supply this information. Please be aware that if the vendor does not supply this information, you will be required to withhold a percentage of your remittance and forward the funds to the IRS. The W-9 form is not filed with the IRS. It's similar to a W-4. You retain this form in your records in the event that the information supplied is inaccurate and you need to demonstrate to the IRS that you made a good faith effort to comply with the 1099 requirement. We recommend you have vendors complete a Form 1099 at the start of your business relationship, so you are not scrambling to gather this information during the processing of the 1099s at year end. You can download the W-9 form from the irs.gov website. As they say, every rule has its exception, and the rule that corporations are exempt from receiving 1099s has several exceptions. Payments made to attorneys, who are often corporations, for their services are not exempt from reporting. Oftentimes, you will see attorneys place their EINs right on their invoices. Almost all are aware that you will be sending them a 1099 for their services. Medical and healthcare payments made to a corporation are required to be reported as well. An example of such would be the fees paid by a dental practice to the maker of dentures. Fish purchases paid in cash to a corporation for resale are not exempt either. This type of payment is reported in Box 1 on Form 1099 NEC and will be explained in later slides. And the last common payment to a corporation that must still be reported are gross proceeds paid to an attorney. These are reported in Box 10 of Form 1099 Miscellaneous. What are gross proceeds? If your company pays a settlement or judgment to an attorney, which includes their client's recovery and also the attorney fees, and you don't know the allocation, then they are gross proceeds, and the total is reported in Box 10 of Form 1099 Miscellaneous. Payments to vendors by cash, checks, ACH, or wire transfers must be reported, but the method of payment does not need to be itemized. However, the IRS does not require payment using third-party electronic services to be reported. Examples of such exempt payment methods are debit cards, credit cards, PayPal, and similar payment methods. Many businesses use a mix of payment methods, using checks sometimes and perhaps credit cards other times. This might seem like quite the burden to separate the payments out and only include the method required. The good news is QuickBooks will exclude the electronic third-party payments automatically if they are properly notated during entry. We will go over this during the 1099 setup phase. Form 1099 Miscellaneous is used to report certain payment types which are made in the course of your trade or business. In beginning the list of payment types eligible for 1099 miscellaneous, ironically, it is most helpful to discuss what they are not. The most commonly encountered exemptions are employee compensation, which is rarely ever reported unless it is paid after an employee is deceased. Payments to a corporation, including LLCs treated as a C Corp or S Corp by the IRS, as we discussed earlier. Payments made for merchandise, telephone, freight, storage, utilities, and similar items. Payments to a tax-exempt organization and tax-exempt trusts such as IRAs, HSAs, the U.S. government, etc., and canceled debt. This is reported on separate forms 1099-A or 1099-C. There are many different types of payments that are reported on 1099s. The list we supply is not exhaustive. Rather, it includes the payment types we have encountered most often over the years. You may have made some types of payments that are not listed, and you are unsure whether to include them. In those instances, please refer to the IRS 2021 instructions for Form 1099 Miscellaneous and 1099 NEC included on our Small Business Service webpage at jrcpa.com. Now that you have a better idea of the types of vendors and payments that need to be reported on Forms 1099, we're going to look more closely at the Form 1099 Miscellaneous in detail. The following types of payments are reported on a 1099 Miscellaneous. Box 1, rents. Accept payments made to a real estate agent or property management company. Include rents paid on equipment, banquet facilities, booth spaces, etc. Do not report rent to storage units. Box 2, royalties of $10 or more. If you paid royalties, refer to the IRS instructions for additional information. Box 3, other income payments of $600 or more that fit the general definition of Form 1099, but are not included in the other boxes, including deceased employee wages, prizes and awards not for services performed, and many more uncommon payment types. Reading the 1099 miscellaneous instructions for Box 3 is very helpful. Box 4, federal income tax withheld of any amount for vendors who did not provide a valid taxpayer identification number, as mentioned in the earlier W9 slide. Remember, this is not for reporting withholdings from an employee. Box 5, any fishing boat proceeds paid to crew members. And finally, Box 6, medical and healthcare payments of more than $600 made in the course of your business or trade to physicians, suppliers, or providers of medical or healthcare services. Prior to 2020, Box 7 was one of the most commonly reported boxes. It was used for non-employee compensation. This is no longer the proper use for Box 7 on Form 1099 Miscellaneous. Box 7 is now a checkbox for payer-made direct sales of $5,000 or more. It is marked with an X for sales by you of $5,000 or more of consumer products to a person on a buy, sell, deposit commission, or other commission basis for resale by the buyer or any other person anywhere other than in a permanent retail establishment. Refer to the instructions if this type of sales applies to you. The need to utilize boxes 8 through 14 are uncommon in our experience. We recommend that if you have payments that fit these general descriptions, you should refer to the 2021 instructions for Form 1099 Miscellaneous and Form 1099 NEC for the complete definition and instructions. Boxes 15 through 17 are reserved for state government use only. Let's discuss Box 10, gross proceeds paid to an attorney again. Here is an example given by the IRS. A person who, in the course of a trade or business, pays $600 of taxable damages to a claimant by paying that amount to a claimant's attorney is required to 1, furnish Form 1099 Miscellaneous to the claimant, reporting damages pursuant to Section 6041, generally in Box 3, and 2, furnish Form 1099 miscellaneous to the claimant's attorney, reporting gross proceeds paid pursuant to Section 6045F in Box 10. However, attorneys' fees paid for their services, such as writing contracts, leases, etc., are reported in Box 1 of the Form 1099 NEC. The new Form 1099 NEC is used to report non-employee compensation information that was previously reported on the Form 1099 Miscellaneous in Box 7 prior to 2020. In general, non-employee compensation is defined by the IRS as when you made the payment to someone who is not your employee, you made the payment for services in the course of your trade or business, you made the payment to an individual, partnership, estate, or in some cases a corporation, and you made the payments to the payee of at least $600 during the year. This includes fees, commissions, prizes and awards for services performed by non-employees, and advertising when the vendor creates the ads. Also, cash payments for fish or other aquatic life paid to someone in the trade of catching fish, where the fish are for resale. However, for these specific payments regarding fish, cash is defined as cash, cashier's check, traveler's check, money order, or bank draft, but do not report payments using a check drawn on a personal or business account. The filing date for 1099 NEC is on or before January 31st, unless that date falls on a weekend or federal holiday. The state filing date may differ. There are a few information boxes on the Form 1099 NEC. Only boxes 1 through 4 are used by the IRS. Boxes 5 through 7 are reserved for state use. First, let's focus on the use of Box 1. Box 1 is used for non-employee compensation totaling $600 or more that is generally subject to self-employment taxes. Please note, if payments to individuals are not subject to self-employment tax and are not reportable elsewhere on the Form 1099 NEC, report them in Box 3 of Form 1099 Miscellaneous. Include fees, commissions, prizes, and awards for services performed by non-employees and other forms of compensation for services rendered for your trade or business by an individual who is not your employee. Also include cash payments for fish purchases, as discussed earlier. Examples of other payments included are fees paid by one professional to another, such as fee splitting or referral fees, payments by attorneys to witnesses or experts in legal adjudication, payment for services, including payment for parts or materials used to perform these services if supplying the parts or materials was incidental to providing the service. For a full list of items reportable in Box 1, refer to the 2021 IRS instructions for Forms 1099 Miscellaneous and 1099 NEC. Do not use Box 1 of Form 1099 NEC for any of the following: expense reimbursements paid to volunteers of nonprofit organizations, deceased employees' wages paid in the year after death. Report these in Box 3 of Form 1099 Miscellaneous. Payments more appropriately described as rent, report in Box 1 of Form 1099 Miscellaneous. Royalties, report in Box 2 of Form 1099 Miscellaneous. Other income not subject to self-employment tax, report in Box 3 of Form 1099 Miscellaneous, and interest payments, reported on Form 1099 INT. The cost of current life insurance protection, this is reported on Form W-2 or Form 1099-R. All employees' wages, travel or auto allowance, or bonuses and prizes, report on Form W-2, and the cost of group life term insurance paid on behalf of a former employee. This is also reported on Form W-2. On Form 1099 NEC, Box 2 is a checkbox to indicate payer-made direct sales totaling 5,000 or more of consumer products to a recipient for resale that are reported in Box 1. These payments are unusual because they can also be reported in Box 7 of Form 1099 Miscellaneous. If you think that you have payments that qualify for this box, please refer to the IRS instructions for more details. Box 3 is currently undefined and reserved for future use. Box 4 of Form 1099 NEC is for federal income tax withheld. Again, this is not to be confused with the federal income tax withholdings from employees' checks that are reported on W-2. In Box 4, enter only backup withholding. For example, persons who have not furnished their taxpayer identification number to you are subject to withholding on payments required to be reported in Box 1. The process of withholding this backup and remitting it to the IRS is somewhat complicated and not within the scope of this 1099 tutorial. Please go to the IRS website for more details. All right, that wraps up our overview of the Forms 1099 Miscellaneous and 1099 NEC. This has been the first video in our Preparing to File Forms 1099 series. There is a lot of detail in this video, so don't let it overwhelm you. In our next video, we will walk you through the steps of setting up everything in QuickBooks, and this will automate many of the details that we just went over. We have separate videos for QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online, so you can follow along. Thank you so much for watching.